Hello and welcome to the human side of digital innovation. That's the title of this episode of the Event Manager podcast. My name is Miguel Neves and I'm the editor-in-chief of EventMB, and I get to speak on this episode with Ade Allenby, the global head of digital and data innovation at Reed Exhibitions. We talk about a wide variety of topics, including how there is a big people component to leveraging new technologies, why speed is so crucial to innovation, why we need to understand attendee needs at different key points of the attendee journey, why only some events may be suitable to become year-long communities, and also why in-person event attendees should recognize and appreciate the advantages of getting away from day-to-day work when they do attend in-person events. I hope you enjoy this episode of the podcast, and if you do, then please subscribe to the podcast and also leave a review or rate the podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
And now for a word from our sponsors, PHL Life Sciences, a division of the Philadelphia Convention and Visitors Bureau. Host your convention or trade show in Philadelphia, one of America's leading life sciences hubs. PHL Life Sciences, the first and only CVB division of its kind, will connect you to the professionals at the forefront of your industry and to a culture you can only find in Philadelphia. A city known for its rich history that's forging a bright future, Philadelphia challenges the expected and defies convention. A world of discovery is waiting. Visit phlife.com to learn more.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Event Manager podcast. I am joined today by Ade Allenby, the global head of digital and data innovation at Reed Exhibitions. Ade, thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you.
So we've only just met recently, and I think it's been really interesting to understand what you do and who you are. But for people that don't know you, could you just explain to us a little bit who is Ade Allenby and what do you do?
Well, I feel like I'm a pretty normal guy. I live in a semi in West London. I've got a lovely girlfriend and a little rascal of a daughter who's nearly 2, and you could definitely tell she's really getting full of herself. I'm not really into mainstream sports. I like things a little bit out of the ordinary, like snowboarding, windsurfing, diving. So over the last year, I've had to make do with rowing my inflatable kayak up and down the Thames. In terms of my career's has been about driving change and implementing things that businesses have never done before, usually digitally. Been involved in change and project management, and my real aim is to kind of harness the teams and the technologies, and that's kind of internal and external, and bring in something that's new to businesses or industries and trying to make it work and move the dials for the customer and the business. So I would say that I'm into technology, but I'm not a techie. I'm not a developer. So I'm interested in what makes people tick. I think I'm quite an intuitive person, and everyone likes to be data driven because that's when you know that you're right. But I think I get a gut feeling about things and what tends to work. What I feel works, and over time those things have tended to get validated and proven out. So I think I've got a balanced approach.
That's and how did you get into that? I mean, I don't know what you studied or how you kind of approached your career, but is this something that you've always wanted to do? Because it feels like quite an interesting kind of angle and quite an interesting approach, but it also feels like something that I don't know how many studies there are for this. I mean, how did you end up here?
Well, I think I owe it thanks to online and digital, really, because I studied business studies at uni, and I was interested in business and commerce, and I started working in sales and marketing side of things, and got more into doing business analysis and project work, and was a project manager for a while, and got into doing digital projects. And there was a point where I actually was so involved that the sponsor of the project was happy for me to be kind of making the day-to-day decisions. And that's really what you want from a project manager, to have that kind of delegation. And I really grasped the nettle there, and it ended up really with me wanting to move actually onto the digital side, to be making those decisions full time. And so I made that move around 15 years ago. And ever since then, I've been doing, year on year, digital just brings something new. And businesses want to do more and more digital. And digital transformation is a bit of a buzzword, but it's just about year on year trying to do more, and more things always come along.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. So what about your current role? Global Head of Digital and Data Innovation at Reed Exhibitions, which you refer to as RX, right? What does that involve? I mean, that sounds like a really interesting title, but could you give us some insight onto what you actually do?
Well, I think innovation is a word that gets used a lot. And the way that I've tried to explain it to people internally is, of course, you need to be thinking about a problem or opportunity, and what's going to solve that problem, and so to come with an idea of really what are you trying to do, what problem are you solving, and why is this solution, do you think it's going to work? But at the same time, you need the support from the teams. You need, it's in the event space, you need the backing of the event team, the event leaders, and you need the budget, and you need somebody willing to provide a budget that may be for something that hasn't been proven before. And for all those things to come together, there's a lot of stakeholder management, and a lot of trying to engage with the different stakeholders around their interests, and that's about making things work for the shows and making things work for the customers. So I think it'll be a consolation for everyone to hear that it's as difficult in a big organizer as it is anywhere to make new teams, new technologies or new ideas work. The teams are focused on delivering their event, making their exhibitors happy, and nobody likes extra work. So the trick is to make it feel like it's not extra work when goals are aligned, and people buy into what you're trying to do. Then that's when you succeed. So a big part of my role is about trying to find those leaders who are interested in trying something new. Maybe they're bringing something to the table themselves, and you can help them to make that happen. And for a big company, of course, we've got a lot of stakeholders, so that can be quite challenging. But we've also got some real assets that other organizations maybe don't have. We've got lots of enthusiastic digital and product people around the business. We've got a lot of event directors and marketing leads who are really keen to do new things, and they're the gold dust. They're the people that really help make stuff happen. We've also got a really amazing insights team who are able to build customer insight around the different types of projects that I do, whether that's an on-site delivery, a digital product, or something that's sort of ongoing over time from show to show. We have a customer panel. We have tools to help gather insights quickly, but also do all kinds of surveys to really understand the customers. So all in all, it's about coordinating all of that. just to come up with the idea is only the first step, or just to see an opportunity. There's then a whole challenge of making things work. And I know you mentioned that it would be remiss of me if I didn't mention Abby Cannons, who's in my team, and she came up with the idea of Innovation Quest, like an 80s platform computer game. You've got to take the purple diamond to the wizard here, and we kind of, we make light of it, because you do, whenever anyone is trying to implement something new or outside of what people are used to, they're going to be bumps in the road, but you've just got to keep at it. So resilience is key, I think, and sticking to your guns.
I think resilience is a topic we definitely want to explore more. Now, it was interesting to hear you describe that, because you didn't use a lot of technical or technology words. It felt like a lot of your role is really a people role. It's really an understanding the needs and finding the right way to deliver things and to present things to those people for different shows. And I know you work at a global level, so you have lots of different shows that you connect with. Is that accurate? Is it more of like a people role than a technology role in many ways?
So most of the work that I've been doing has been with third-party vendors, and so they're often bringing the technology and very often a lot of the know-how of how to make things work. So I'm then that interface to challenge them to deliver well, to make sure we're super focused on what information and data and feedback that we're gathering to prove whether something works, but then to smooth their way into the teams and help them engage with the right people in the teams and make sure that they get the right level of traction. So there's a lot of focus on getting things aligned first, understanding what the impact's going to be on the team, making sure that you understand success metrics and where you're getting your data from, and that you're getting customer feedback in a timely way, because the post-show survey is a typical way of getting information, but they're always challenging because they're long and really important to the show team. So how can you get additional sources of feedback as well? So yeah, I think it's right. There's I'm obviously really keen that we leverage the new technologies that are available, and that through COVID, people have become more and more used to and aware of. But there's a big people element to it, and ultimately we're about people convening in a place and a time, and it's got to work then.
Interesting. So, I mean, what I'd love to understand how it works. Do you go out and find tools? I mean, do you have a sort of business need that gets fed to you, and then you go out and find a tool or a process even that would help to kind of match that or help that along? Or is it more that you're kind of pitched different tools and you decide which ones might be useful to some of the shows? How does that work from a sort of where the problem comes from, and then how do you go and find the solutions?
So it can come in a number of different ways. So the purest way that it comes about is from show strategies. And so a few years ago, a show came to me because they really felt they had a problem with navigation at the show. And I think they felt like there might be a kind of super tool out there that was going to instantly kind of solve the problem. And they didn't have a great deal of budget. In fact, I think they sort of cut some budget in that area. So I went in there and was looking at the different options, and in the end, the solution was a online offline solution. We brought in an app which we made into, and we called the navigation app, because we wanted that to be the use case of why people downloaded it, because people recognized they had that problem and so would engage with it. But it was also about signage. It was about having people to ask directions for key places, where, key pinch points. So through that, we recognized that there were technology options, but actually, when you look at the customer journey, there were different challenges at different points, which maybe help offline, maybe help online. So it's usually a mix, and you have to understand and, of course, put yourself in the shoes of the customer. Yeah, other ideas can come directly from show teams. They've tried something and they said, "Hey, we've had some success with this. We think it would be able to work globally." And of course, I get pitched a lot, and I engage with the event technology market to understand what's out there, and that gives me a good understanding of where I think I see opportunities internally, because I am attending shows in a normal world. I'm speaking to exhibitors. We're looking at the surveys that we do. We're trying to find out what are the key goals and how can we help customers towards those key goals. And I suppose a really sort of relevant instance over the last year was when COVID came about. I got a phone call, a message, from my colleague in China, who said that they'd shut the venues. And my first reaction was, "Why? Okay, well, what can we do digitally to help here? How are we going to engage those audiences?" And so that came out of a conversation and a recognition of an immediate need. And so I worked with colleagues internally in the global team to spin up the ability to assess what tools we had, what tools we needed, and to share best practice. And that was a big part of how I've contributed to that over the last year, from in 2020 and into this year.
Interesting. So tell me a little bit more about that. I mean, in many parts of the world, shows haven't been happening for a year and a half or however long it's been now. And have you been kind of working on innovation for when they can happen, or when they are able to happen, or have you been working on innovation virtual side? It sounds like you've been doing a bit of both, but is it sort of an even split? How does that really break down?
Yes. So when the venues started to shut down globally, that obviously closed off some avenues of products that we were in the midst of testing and planning to test, and so a number of things got cancelled. But then we pivoted to looking at what was going to offer more value digitally. So there were things that we had in the pipeline that we'd already been testing that we thought would be could adapt well to digital. Also, we saw what a lot of the digital meetings platforms did to kind of rise to the occasion and start to be able to deliver online conferences, online meetings, as they built out their platforms, and to kind of understand what they could offer and how we should use those, how we should use webinars and online events to reach those audiences.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a lot of people around the world have been taking different approaches, but obviously the scale with which you had to deal with is a little bit different, or a little bit on the large side. I wanted to ask one last question about sort of this bringing tools in, Could you give us an idea of how many people are involved? So if you are using a new piece of technology, I think there's probably some management decisions, but there's probably also an IT kind of team to look over the if it fits in from that perspective, maybe a data team. Could you give us an idea of how complex that process is, the kind of different kind of teams that are looking at it, or is it something that you can actually make decisions and kind of action pretty quickly yourself? How does that work?
It really depends on whether the product can operate in a standalone way. Like, for instance, we did a lot of work in 2019 on digital screens and looking at what levels of engagement we could get with digital screens for things like floor planning and recommendations and things like that. So that's potentially something that doesn't need a lot of integration. But as soon as you start to need to identify a user by their badge, for instance, then it starts to need some data integration. So that's not only the integration work itself, but there's more needed in terms of security assessments and privacy compliance assessments and things like that. From an innovation perspective, what we want to do is learn fast. So the quicker that we can implement on a show, and if that's successful or we learn from that, we can roll it to more shows, and as much as possible make do with a standalone experience, because then what you want to do is, once you've proved success, is get it better and better integrated with your business as usual functions and your core systems. So it all depends on to what extent that's possible. A lot of products will need customer data, and that will either come from registration or from our internal systems. And so a lot of the time, what you end up doing is kind of uploading spreadsheets or managing data more manually, just so that you can implement quicker, prove the value, and then sort of move it more into a roadmap.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting insight, and yeah, I think it's probably good advice for all kind of event tech providers. If they can have at least a version of what they provide be more standalone, then there's a better chance to be part of this integration process, because it may not be ideal to integrate right away, right? If you can test something quickly, then they stand a better chance.
And that's something that I do have conversations with different vendors about, is that many vendors have quite broad solutions, and I think organizers obviously have existing internal tools. They maybe have existing suppliers. So having a tool that solves a specific need but can integrate into the experience easily is really, I think, what a lot of organizers are looking for. But knowing that maybe if they have got a broader tool set, that should other needs come up, they have it there, and can potentially serve different needs. But it's about also from a communication and messaging point of view, being very clear about that, the value proposition of what it is you're adding to your client's business.
Yeah, it's that buy-in is so important, right? What are the advantages for the user? I think sometimes we're guilty of getting very excited about the advantages for the organizer, and kind of very quick to communicate that or to kind of boast about that. But then when we look at the advantages for the user, they're not maybe as large. I think particularly when it comes to data, there's a lot of kind of push towards using very data heavy things, but I don't know if there's that many advantages to the user. And I think that's always really important if you need the buy-in from the user, which you normally do.
Yes, yes, and I think our uh, our guardians of the technology and the people who run the technology for events. Obviously, they're going to want data in one place. They're going to want a single customer journey, because it's they know the challenges of people having to go to different places to put in data and interact with different platforms. But I do always try and take a step back from that and look at what at that point the user is interacting. Are they bothered about those other things at that point? Because I think there's a balance to be had. Ultimately, you do want an integrated experience, but I think for the sake of innovation and getting customers to interact with things, that you might have to do without some of that in the short term.
Are you ready to celebrate your successes in the world of meetings and events? The Skift Meetings Awards are back for 2024, recognizing the most innovative business events companies across 15 categories, and we want you to be a part of it. Winners will feature on Skift Meetings, sending a clear signal to events professionals around the world that these are partners they can rely on. The final deadline for submissions is June 11th. We encourage you to start your submission today to secure the best entry rates. For more information and to start your submission, head to live.skift.com.
So, Ade, I know that hybrid events, something that we've talked about a little bit. I'd love to get your view on them. Is hybrid just a buzzword? Are they really the future, or are they just going to go away very quickly? I mean, from where you're standing right now, how do you see hybrid events?
Well, my challenge is that hybrid doesn't speak of value. And we're in danger of going down the same rabbit hole with hybrid as we have with mobile apps, because a mobile app can be enormously useful, but just saying you've got an app isn't good enough. Just saying you've got a hybrid show isn't good enough. What are you offering? So I would like to change the conversation to be about what has the new normal, or the new expectations of digital. What do they offer events? What are customers' new expectations in terms of digital, and how can that enable events?
Yeah, that's a really interesting. And what would be the kind of, how do you see that changing things? What would be the advantage of looking at it in that way? How do you think that would change?
Well, clearly people have become more used to operating remotely, and from all walks of life and all age groups, people are much more familiar with that technology, and it's almost expected. So there's a bigger opportunity in terms of reach, but what question are we answering? Are we just helping people engage who aren't able to make it because of the pandemic, or are we actually moving to a state where we're trying to help people engage who want to engage with the content, with the show, with the audience, but can't for whatever reason? Everybody's had situations where they wanted to go to an event, but work or life happens and you can't make it. Is that person going to get the kind of value that they want? Are the goals aligned between what we were trying to do for visitors and buyers versus exhibitors?
Yeah. So my interpretation of that is somewhere along the lines of, when we're putting on an event that has that is hybrid, but then you can participate virtually or in person, we're asking for people's attention for a period of time. And I think what you're saying is, if we're just trying to offer some sort of replacement during the pandemic, we may be asking the wrong question. What we should be saying is, we want your attention for this period of time because we think we'll find this interesting. And here are different ways for you to interact with what we can offer, or to kind of connect with everybody else who's sharing in this experience. And I think that's probably a slightly different proposal and a slightly different outlook onto how to create these kind of gatherings, whatever they look like. Do you agree with that?
Yes, for sure. I think on one hand, you have the potential to create these moments in time. We've had the UFI Connects webinars and discussions over the summer, which have come about to discuss who owns the data. And loads of people were interested in that. As we know, more data is being created digitally. It was of the moment, and people came from all around the world digitally to listen and to take part in those discussions. And people really felt like they wanted to be part of that at the time. So there's those moments in time where people know that there's something that they want to engage with from a content or discussion perspective, and when it's timely like that, then digital is by far the best option. But then that UFI group, is coming together in Rotterdam next month, and in November, and that group enjoys interacting with each other, and they're looking forward to getting back to that. But then the expectations of accessing remotely means that there'll be a virtual event the week after, the period after, for those that can't attend. So the expectations have changed. I think people wouldn't have expected there to be digital event supporting for those that can't attend or don't get chance, and that's it's the need that we've got to figure out.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point. Just, from your own experience, have you participated in any hybrid events that stand out, or have you, what have you seen in terms of hybrid that has been done well as far as you can tell?
I've got to be honest that I think the reason I find it's so important that we align needs is because I'm one of those people that find it so easy to zone out during webinars and content. So for me, those webinars and the events where you're participating in something, we had a really great event internally about inclusion, and to have a really great speaker talking about something that was really mattered at the time, and as important to you personally and to the business, that you're really engaged with those kind of events. But I think I know from my point of view that you're sitting in front of your computer, and that is the place where you've got personal messages coming, you've got work messages, you've got people calling on you, you've got things that you've got deadlines for. So it's one of the toughest places to engage. So and that's why making it right for the channel is really important. So we shouldn't be expecting people to sit in front of webinars for 45 minutes, an hour. And lots of people have started to talk about having more bite-sized content, and this is where sharing success stories, sharing like new ideas works really well in shorter bite-sized chunks.
Brilliant. Yeah,
I do wanted to add actually that when the pandemic really just first hit, and we started to look at what we wanted to do globally, our CTO was very vocal about, we said, we've got to get videos and they've got to be short and they've got to be useful and to the point. And we created an internal SharePoint site, sharing insights, gathering different examples of digital events from around the world, and making it into a format that people could easily consume. And each video would have to have a reason why the person should watch it. What was it telling them? And I think that was the first time I'd really recognized and put into action that kind of engagement strategy.
I agree. I mean, you mentioned, you covered in some sense the kind of user-generated content, or at least getting that kind of user conversation going more than sort of top-down content. Is that something that you've explored and that you think needs more attention? We've heard a lot of talk in the industry of user-generated content and also sort of self-organizing communities. Where do you stand on that?
I mean, this goes back to my days working in B2B marketing, digital marketing in telecoms, which was over 6 years ago now. And one of the things that we recognized was to present your solution, you also need the stories that your customers are telling, and to reference your customers and how they have driven success with your product. So, and I believe this is a really untapped area that we should look into more about. Not just hearing from product experts, but to hear from the people that they've helped and have benefited from the solutions that they've offered. Because that's, I think, why a lot of people engage with content. It's to hear from people like them.
Yeah, that learning from peers is very important, and probably underexploited in terms of marketing. I have this theory that one of the reasons events and shows don't sell as much of that, or don't sort of promote that angle as much, is that it's a bit scary. It's a bit of a, it's a step in the dark, but also that keynotes are, it's easier to just sit and listen to a keynote. If you have to talk to people, if you have to engage, if you have to sort of ask questions yourself, then it's harder work. It's more work for you. Do you think that's why we don't see as much of this?
Yeah, I think it is obviously more difficult to make that happen, because if I think of as a user of technology products, if I could have a product expert and a user to talk to, and so I can ask any questions I have about the product, but then ask, align to some of the same challenges I might be having about making things work, about getting buy-in internally and all of those kind of things. So I think the more that we can bring that element into how speaking at events, at how exhibitors present themselves, and there's obviously opportunities like networking and roundtables and discussions where bringing in those customer views is a great opportunity.
Yeah, I think that on the online side of things, there's a sort of ask me anything type of sessions where there's more of an open-ended conversation. I think those are becoming popular, but not all events are kind of ready for that or tend to promote those things. But what about the community side? We've heard a lot of talk in the industry about events becoming less one-off, or at least on the digital side, becoming less one-off and turning into sort of year-long communities. Is that something that you think is the future and that you're actively pursuing? Where do you stand on that?
I think that there are events which suit having year-round content, having regular blogs, regular webinars, because people are looking to consume that content. I think the trick is to understand what kind of frequency is relevant and what else is going on in that market, because maybe that market is very well served with that kind of content. So at one end of the scale, you've got, if you just have the physical event, that is the time and place, and you're creating that marketplace, you're creating that place to meet. And then at the other end of the scale, you've got an industry perhaps where having regular content is really in demand. And so you've got to figure out where are you on that spectrum. I always try and ask show teams the question, how are you getting the traffic? How are you getting the engagement? Is it because of the quality of the speakers, or because the topics are really relevant, or there's maybe specific issues happening that are getting people in? But that's the bread and butter to the conference people, because that's how they're forming their conference content for the shows. So what's enabling them to extend it throughout the year? Because as I said, my litmus test is always me in front of my computer zoning out because of everything else going on at your computer. Is it really the content that people want to engage with? So we've got to really make sure that we get the understanding of what the customers and the audience wants, and how frequent that's going to be relevant to them.
I think that's a really thoughtful and balanced approach, and I think it's probably a mistake to think that every event has a community around it that's sort of exclusive for it. And I think many events are part of many communities, but the event will be a sort of one happening for that community in the year. So maybe that community doesn't want to join something online year long if it's then involved with a number of other events. So it does feel like a kind of healthy approach to look at that and analyze that before making those sort of investments.
Yeah. And I think we shouldn't underestimate how valuable it is for people to take themselves out of their day-to-day and to go to a place where they feel like an industry professional. They feel like part of an industry, and therefore they're more engaged and they're more focused.
Yeah, at home, doing everything from home, from the same system, the same place, doesn't necessarily engage, right? You feel a kind of pressure to.
The opportunity is to spin something up quickly, or to gather people, from all corners of the world, when that's the thing that makes it valuable, and to balance that against what's it going to take to get everybody to the same place.
Absolutely. So I wanted to kind of just touch on one last point, which is really data. That's part of your job title, and I think a big part of what you do. There's so many tech vendors pushing this idea that data is so important. In my experience, a lot of organizers understand the need for data, but essentially get very overwhelmed with data and find it quite hard to find what they're looking for, or to really distill the data into useful insight, particularly at sort of a pace and at a level, or a simplicity level that they can use in their planning. Do you feel otherwise? Is that how you see it, or do you feel like there's really good ways to go about it, and people are good at this? Really,
I'm gonna name drop Mark Maiden from Crowd Connected here, because he wrote a really great paper on engaging with data, which I'd highly recommend. And he did it from the perspective of somebody in the industry, and it was really about everybody's got a level of data that they can use to tell them something. And you're going, whether it's registration data, whether it's entry data, scanning data, engagement data from your platforms, and the trick is not to get overwhelmed by taking what's achievable for you, what's most accessible for you, and what's actually going to help you understand the value you're delivering, or what the customer's engaging with. And so there's more and more data signals and data touch points that we can set up in events, and that's great, and I'm really into all of that stuff. But it's about peeling the onion. We're looking at different levels of detail of our understanding of customers. So the opportunity is to build that out over time. But I don't think anyone's cracked the code yet. Everybody's working towards that goal. So wherever you're starting, start where you are, and move to the next level for yourself.
I think that's great advice. Is there any kind of new pieces of data that you're particularly interested in sort of harnessing for the shows that you're overseeing or that you work with?
Well, I've always thought that the event is a sort of focus point. The physical event is a focus point, and now the digital event has offered that opportunity as well. So, as if you're in a market where you're trying to engage buyers and sellers, well, those buyers are going to make signals because they may interact with some content, or they may download a white paper, or they may submit an inquiry form. And those are quite disparate signals that may happen over time. But at the show, in terms of what content is being interacted with, what exhibitors, what products, what zones and areas of the show, there's loads of information there about what's trending, about what are the products and topics of interest, and it all happens with thousands of people in a very short space of time. So that's what I'm interested in and excited about, is turning that into insights about customers and what they want, and to be able to match them to what they need.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah, point about how intense the collection of data has to be at events, because there's so much happening. It is the kind of pinnacle of a lot of things. So yeah, really interesting. Hey, thank you so much for all this chat. I've taken a lot of notes, so I'm sure the podcast notes will be extensive. So hopefully that'll be interesting for everybody. I do appreciate you joining us today, and I wondered if you could answer our last question, which is if you could recommend someone that we should have on the show so that we can keep this community growing of podcast guests here on the Event Manager podcast.
Well, I think there's a few people that I find really interesting in the industry. My boss, Jamie Harrison, he's the VP of Product for RX, and he's a real evangelist for a customer first and delivering incremental value and delivering digitally. I'm on the UFI Innovation Working Group, and there's some really seasoned professionals on there, like Joanne Kellaway from InfoSilence Freeman, and Stefan Forsai from Easy Fares, who have a wealth of experience and are really the go-to for our innovation content, and always talk a lot of sense, a very sensible, pragmatic approach. And in the industry, a guy that I always like listening to is Tim Group from Grip. I think he's really inspirational. He's really enthusiastic about what's achievable and where the industry can go.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Those are 3 excellent recommendations. We'll do our best to follow up on all 3. Hey, thank you once again for joining us. And for everybody listening, thank you for joining us on the Event Manager podcast. Please do rate and review, and of course, subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for listening. Goodbye for now. Thank you for listening to this edition of the Event Manager podcast. Please subscribe and rate the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. For the latest news and the best articles on technology and innovation in the event industry, head over to eventmb.com.